It's time, Fort Wayne. Your sports, your station. It's the Sports Rush with Brett Rump. Covering all the topics that hit a nerve here in the Summit City.
Clark, 11 yards, touchdown.
Only on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Now here's your host, Brett Rump.
The greatest, most interesting, most important person of all time.
You are incredible. Fordham won.
Yeah, well, you're half right.
What is this, amateur hour?
This is going to be huge.
I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just when I think you said the stupidest thing ever, you keep talking.
I think that's the worst thing I've ever heard.
That boy ain't right.
The simplest way to put it, I have problems.
Welcome to the alleged show.
Out of my dreams.
Here we go, taking you home on a Thursday. You can mark down 4 in the books for this work week. You got 1 to go, and it's the Sports Rush, your daily local sports fix, 4 to 6. I am Brett Rump, along with Adam Lundy. We've got you connected on the Parkview Sports Medicine text line at 260-447-8500. Questions, comments, or suggestions. We would love to hear from you on this Thursday. I don't know if it's a sunny Thursday or a rainy Thursday. It might just depend on the minute, because we've got some clouds and maybe even a little bit of rain moving through. But it was bright and sunny about 20 minutes ago. So but you know what? It's not 7 degrees, so we'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Can't complain.
It's just one of those times where, it's just moving to go over quickly, and it's a little small clouds, so we'll see. Yeah,
it's not going to ruin your Thursday evening, but we've got a big show coming up between now and 6 o'clock. We're going to talk about the big Hoosiers win, the Mastodons with a huge week ahead, and it doesn't matter if I'm talking about men's basketball or women's basketball. Also, you've got, Coach Norman Dale passing away. And we'll talk about Hoosiers, the impact of that movie, not only on our state, but worldwide, really, the impact of that movie. Also, I'm going to rank the Indiana college basketball teams. Haven't done it all year, but I'll go ahead and throw one at you here that we're getting late in the season, and I'll give you a 1 through 11 on the Division I basketball teams in our state as to how I would rank them. We've got Kent Sterling joining us. Busy day at the Combine. We'll get caught up with Kent on not only the Combine, but everything that's happening at Indiana, and if there is a name that has surfaced as far as the next Indiana basketball coach. And in hour number 2, we'll visit with Eric Dudkevich from Parkview Sports Medicine, and we'll get a top 5 from Dude and talk a little bit about Parkview Sports Medicine baseball. Not only the Baseball Classic that is returning to Parkview Field, but also the Baseball Academy with Josh Van Meter, who we had on the show last week. But once again, 260-447-8500, the Parkview Sports Medicine text line. Last night, how about those Hoosiers? What a nice win. I know it's Penn State. I know it's a game that Indiana was favored by 5.5 when it opened, 6.5 when it closed, and they won it by 5. So you could say, well, they really didn't cover. It wasn't that impressive, but a win is a win, baby, and they needed it last night. And this game was back and forth. It was a tight contest up until the last 5 or 6 minutes when Indiana was able to get a couple of back-to-back buckets and open up at one point a 7-point lead, and they held on to win it 83-78 over the Nittany Lions. Remember, it's a desperate Nittany Lions squad. They're playing for their tournament life. 15 of the 18 in the Big Ten are going to play in the Big Ten tournament. 3 teams will see their season just quietly dissipate. And for Penn State, they didn't want to be one of those teams that's left out. When 15 of 18 get in, you certainly don't want to be one of the 3 that doesn't. And right now, that's where Penn State is at. So they got the best that Penn State could bring them. And the Hoosiers responded with an 83-78 win. You know, it's interesting because it kind of proves to me that it's not always just about talent. The character and chemistry might be just as important, if not more important, than what you've got on your roster as far as talent. That's why sometimes 5 stars doesn't mean anything if they're a 5-star that doesn't mix with anything else. It's like having a really great tasting ingredient, but there's no recipe that includes that particular ingredient. You can't mix it with anything else. And sometimes you find these guys and they just don't blend with their teammates, whether it's their style of ball, whether it's their selfishness, whether it's the chemistry they've got with the rest of the guys. But for some reason, Mike Woodson has rolled with Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal, and Luke Goody. And that trio has led them to the last 2 wins. And I thought, once again, those 3 guys, they kind of showed the heart and the character that Indiana has been looking for all season. And it's guys that aren't necessarily your 5 stars. They're not the one and dones. They're not the guys that have, surefire professional careers or maybe NBA careers. But they're willing to do whatever they can do to help their team win and to support their teammates, whether that's distributing the ball, whether it's hitting shots. Man, I tell you what, I was impressed last night with Luke Goody. Nothing to do with the shooting, and that's what he's known for. I was impressed with his defensive effort and the work he was doing in boxing out. There was one play where the guy was trying to jump all over him, and Goody would not let him get over the top. He maintained his position, kept him off the glass. Goody ended up not getting the rebound, but he was able to tip it off to a teammate. And I thought those are the type of plays that are winning plays that most people will never see in a box score, because Luke Goody would get nothing more than, a tip ball that was rebounded by someone else?
Yeah.
But yet it was an effort play that makes the difference between wins and losses.
Yeah, and you kind of start to see just this transition of just focusing on just relying on your one-and-done players, and all of a sudden it's kind of like, hey, we're going to rely on our senior leadership, some of our veteran experience, and it's just kind of been a rapid transition that we've seen here coming at the end of Mike Woodson's career.
Yeah, Mike Woodson, I think, always went with the approach that stars win games, which is absolutely true in the NBA, but it is not in college basketball. It doesn't necessarily guarantee wins just because you've got the most the greatest individual talent. And Mike Woodson has now found a group that plays really well together, that commits to all of the blue collar type plays. They will play hard at both ends of the floor, and I've been impressed. And even Oumar Ballo looked good again last night. And he got thrown into an unexpected role of extra minutes because Malik Renew ended up sick during the game. So it wasn't even something that they really counted on. They kind of got stuck in that situation. It's like somebody fouling out midway through the first half. And so Malik Renew couldn't play at all in the second half. And Ballo had to get some heavy minutes, but I tell you, I did not think he had that kind of conditioning, because he had to go long and hard, and he did. Ballo ended up with 20 points, 12 rebounds, solid effort inside. And you had Trey Galloway, 4 for 5 3-point shooting. Huge for Indiana if Trey Galloway's hitting shots. 16 points, but what's impressive with Galloway, 9 assists. He realized how to get his teammates the ball. And he was kind of Braden Smith-esque in the way he was able to penetrate, draw defenders, and find the open man. I just thought overall, and I've been critical of Indiana when they've deserved it. But last night, they don't deserve the criticism. They deserve some recognition, because that was a very solid, well-executed offensive game, and Indiana ends up winning it. Now, 78 points for Penn State. Yeah, they had a good night.
Yeah, they fought.
And but they were fighting for everything, and they were not going to concede a single possession because they wanted to be in the Big Ten tournament.
Yep.
And now I was surprised when we talk about Woodson that there was a point in that first half, and if you Indiana fans remember this, about midway through the first half, Indiana was up, I think it was 17-12, and then all of a sudden Penn State picked up all the momentum, all the energy plays were going Penn State's way. They went on a 10-0 run. They took a 22-17 lead. I was shocked that Mike Woodson did not take a timeout. You've got one timeout to use somewhere in the first half, or you lose it.
Yeah,
and I thought, Mike Woodson, coach, you've got to take the timeout here. This game's getting away from you. You can't let Penn State run away and then have the crowd turn on you. And it was 10 straight scored by Penn State, but credit to his basketball team. Without the benefit of a timeout, they were able to regroup. They were able to get themselves not only back in it, but I think they ended up tying it up at 22 apiece. So they had the perfect response after the 10-point Penn State run. But I was impressed. Solid night for the Indiana Hoosiers, and now I think they've got a clear path to get into the NCAA tournament. And I would not have thought that a couple of weeks ago, but a big win against Michigan State, knocking off Purdue, 2 games that we had almost in Sharpie that those were going to be losses for the Hoosiers. And now they've won them. They've got that on their quad 1 list. They've got marquee victories over nationally ranked opponents. All they need to do at this point, I think, is go on the road, split a pair out west, beat Ohio State, win a game in the Big Ten tournament, and Indiana's name is going to be called on Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I know that the newest edition of Bracketology will be coming out tomorrow morning at about 9 a.m., so I'll be interested to see where the Hoosiers land after their win last night over Penn State. I do hope Malik Renew is all right. He had to leave, actually, before the game. He didn't play at all. He was doing shoot-around and apparently just came down with something, ended up having to go to the ER.
Apparently, I was hearing reports this morning, they thought it was that flu that's going around. And they said, that flu can come out of nowhere. And when it hits like a tornado. I mean, it can be debilitating. It can just, knock you down. And apparently he got hit with that.
So you hope he'll be all right to go out on that road trip to Washington and Oregon.
But they went all the way up to almost game time before they realized they were not going to have him. And so you're going down the stretch against a team whose best player, I can't say best player because he's not the best player. But Conan Niederhauser is the 7-footer for Penn State. And, he's a guy that Indiana had to match up against. And really, Ballo was about the only one that gives that kind of size for Indiana. And I thought Ballo played terrific inside, both offensively and defensively. I thought he was good last night. And with Ballo, is he focused? Is he ready to play? Is he going to give you 100%? I thought he looked inspired. And some of it could just be that this team had that chance to get those 9 days off, get some rest, recoup. And it's not just physical. Remember, fatigue can be mental as well. It's that mental stress of having to deal with, losing and having to prepare for another opponent when you're already kind of losing some confidence. And Indiana just looks like a different team right now when they take the court.
Yeah, and I think we're also starting to see some of that mentality where these players are realizing that things are coming down to the end here, and after this season, no matter if you're going to remain a Hoosier or have something else online, everything's going to change after this season. So why not just go out with a bang? I think we're starting to see some of that mentality, too.
Last week of the regular season for the Horizon League, and the Mastodons challenging for the number 2 seed. I think they've got like almost a 50% chance of getting the number 2 seed if they can win both games this week against Northern Kentucky coming up tonight and then go on the road and beat Cleveland State. Neither game a gimme game, but if the Mastodons can find ways to win both games, you could see them sitting in the number 2 seed line when the Horizon League tournament is announced Saturday night. But, you look at the schedule and you look at who they're competing against. Cleveland State, obviously, they've been on a slide. I think they've lost 4 of their last 6. They are going to be at Wright State tonight. And then they go back home to take on Purdue Fort Wayne on Saturday. Youngstown State has just 1 game left, and that's going to be at Northern Kentucky, which is tonight's opponent for the Mastodons, and that will be in Highland Heights, Kentucky on Saturday. Now, Youngstown State and Milwaukee, teams that are right there tied with the Mastodons, but the Mastodons do have the tiebreaker against Milwaukee. And Milwaukee takes on Oakland tonight. Now, Oakland's 2 games back, which means if Oakland can't beat Milwaukee at Milwaukee, then the Dons are assured of at least a top 5 seed. But if Oakland beats Milwaukee, you still have to deal with the Oakland Golden Grizzlies as somebody to keep an eye on. And Milwaukee falls a game behind the Dons if the Dons win tonight. Also, big congrats to Rasheed Bello and Jalen Jackson. We mentioned this yesterday, but it's worth mentioning a second time that the Horizon League announced their all-Horizon League academic first team, and both Rasheed Bello and Jalen Jackson, among the 5 players in the entire league, 11 teams, they were 2 of the 5 that made first team. So congratulations to both of those guys.
That's awesome, representing the Dons on the court and the classroom. We love that, man.
Let's go ahead and find out what's happening in the world of sports. It's a check of today's top headlines with Adam Lundy.
All right, thanks, Brett. NFL teams were informed today that the 2025 salary cap has been set at a record $279.2 million per team. League spokesperson Brian McCarthy announced it's an increase of $23.8 million per team. Last year's salary cap was $255.4 million per team. McCarthy also announced that the limit on projected player costs, including benefits, is set at $362.48 million. Keeping an eye on potential players that the Colts should or might add in NFL free agency, the Seahawks have given safety Rayshawn Jenkins permission to seek a trade, per sources. In 13 games for the Seahawks last season, Rayshawn Jenkins had 53 tackles, 2 sacks, and a fumble return for a touchdown. Chicago White Sox fans, cover your ears. It's spring training in the MLB, and today Andrew Benintendi left today's game for the White Sox with soreness in his right hand. He is being evaluated. We'll keep you up to date on that one. And taking a look at the NFL Combine down in Indianapolis, shout out to Indiana Hoosier defensive tackle C.J. West. He ran a 4.95 40 with a 1.73 10-yard split. That's impressive because he's 6'1", 316 pounds. So he was moving.
Just amazing what some of these big guys can pick it up and put it down, and the speed that they can possess. What amazing athletes.
It's crazy.
260-447-8500, the Parkview Sports Medicine text line. We invite you to give us your thoughts, questions, or suggestions. 260-447-8500. Coming up next, we remember one of the greatest sports movies of all time because the star of that movie passed away yesterday. Also, I'll rank the Indiana college basketball teams, and Kent Sterling joins us just after the bottom of the hour. It's all part of a Thursday edition of the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Kent Sterling will join the program coming up in about 10 minutes. Kent Sterling's been checking out the NFL Combine and, of course, a big Indiana Hoosiers follower, so we'll get updated on what's happening with Indiana as far as the next head coach goes with Kent Sterling coming up in just a few minutes. Well, yesterday, got some, or I guess actually, was it late last night when we learned about Gene Hackman passing away? One of my favorite actors throughout my lifetime because so many of the big movies that I enjoyed as a younger adult, Gene Hackman had a major role in. But the one that really stands out for me and for so many people in this state is Gene Hackman as the head coach in the movie Hoosiers. Yeah, Norman Dale. Gene Hackman played that role. Didn't want it, didn't like it, didn't think the movie was going to do anything. But it turned into a sports classic. Now, he passed away, and what's strange is I heard no foul play, but yet Gene Hackman, his wife, and the dog all passed away in the house, and they were found on a safety check. Somebody, the police or fire, went to the house and found all 3 occupants, the couple and their pet, all passed away. And I'm like, okay, they had to have died like within seconds of one another, because if you're a spouse and your other spouse passes away, you call 911, right? And if there's no foul play, it's not like some kind of a murder-suicide situation or a crime scene. And so I was wondering if it could have been carbon monoxide poisoning, because it's the only thing I can think of. And I don't know if they've released any new information on it, but that was one of my first thoughts when I heard about this. But he and his wife both passed away, found dead in their home, and it's in New Mexico. That's where he went to kind of leave the Hollywood scene. He retired and got out of Hollywood and basically just got out of the public eye and ended up passing away at 95 years old.
Yeah, still no cause. It is worth noting that there are 2 other dogs that were found alive inside the house. So if you're looking for a brief glimmer of sunshine in a very sad story, there are 2 dogs that made it out okay. There's a lack of gas or carbon monoxide found by the fire department, so it led investigators to question their initial suggestion of a gas or carbon monoxide leak. So we don't know. But it's sad.
By the way, movie Hoosiers, where's it at on your list? To me, it's number 1 sports movie all time.
I'm just such a sucker for the romanticism of Bull Durham and baseball. It's top 3 though, no question about it.
I've got it number 1.
Number 1.
Fell in love with it from the first moment I saw it. And it's one of those movies where no matter how many times I saw it, I still enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you can always rewatch.
I mean, there's still emotions involved. You still, you get drawn into the storylines, the human aspect of it. And I just thought, I mean, you've got the coach falling in love. You've got the drunk father, trying to deal with sobriety. You've got, kids on the team that are a little bit misfits. You've got the star player who left and then said he was coming back. And I mean, all these different storylines within the movie that just stand out. And to me, there's no movie that has ever been better in sports. Now, I know there's somebody that's going to text us on our Parkview Sports Medicine text line 260-447-8500, and they'll throw an argument at me. This movie is so much better than Hoosiers, but it's probably somebody who's an Indiana transplant and didn't grow up here remembering the original Milan story. Now, I wasn't around when Milan won in 54.
Oh,
okay.
You didn't play against those guys?
No, I was not broadcasting that game on 1380 The Fan. It was not the Parkview Sports Medicine high school basketball game of the week. How's that for a sponsor drop? But no, in the movie, Hilliard Gates had a significant role. And that was the thing. For the authenticity of the movie, they wanted Indiana players that had played high school basketball in the state of Indiana. And so it's kind of cool. Not only did they stick with that as far as the players, but you had, the announcers and everything that was the original. It was filmed at Hinkle Fieldhouse. It was really cool. So kind of a sad day. But, yeah, for me, Hoosiers tops the list. All right, so Indiana college basketball teams, we got 11 of them. Where have they been or where have they gotten themselves into at this point in the season? We've got 11 teams. Number 11 for me, Southern Indiana. 10-18 on the year, 5-13 in the Ohio Valley Conference. Southern Indiana left D2, moved up to D1. They've got perhaps the nicest arena for a college of their size anywhere. I mean, it is gorgeous down there. They've got tons of money, but so far it hasn't produced results on the court. So Southern Indiana is number 11. At number 10, remember when I ranked them number 10, where I went to college and played baseball. It is the Valparaiso Beacons. They were not the Beacons when I was there, but Valparaiso, 13-17 overall. They're 6-13 in the Missouri Valley. I've got them at number 10. At number 9, Paul Casaro's IU Indy Jaguars. 9-20 overall, 5-13 in the league, but I can tell you firsthand that is a team that competes each and every game. They don't have the talent yet. He had to assemble basically an entire roster, did it mostly with guys that were among the older group from his Division II Indy Greyhounds. And, you go from Division II and transfer to Division I, and they're still Division II talent, even if they're good Division II talent. And so just not quite enough talent, but I've got them at number 9 this week. Indiana State just ahead of them at number 8. The Sycamores, not exactly the same team as they were a year ago.
No Avila.
No, 13-17 in the year, 7-12 in the MVC. At number 7, chirp for the Ball State Cardinals. Seems like every game the Cardinals play is going to be close. They had a battle with Akron. They fell short earlier this week. Ball State, even on the year, 14-14, 7-8, hovering around the middle of the pack in the Mid-American Conference. The Cardinals at number 7. At number 6, the Evansville Purple Aces, 11-19. Not impressive, but they are 8-11 in the Missouri Valley Conference. They've played some better basketball in conference play, and they beat Valparaiso and Indiana State in their last 2 games. So I'm like, okay, I got to put them above those 2 schools. So Evansville comes in at number 6. At number 5, it's hometown proud. The Purdue Fort Wayne Mastodons, 19-10 on the year. They're going to go for their 20th win of the season tonight. 12-6, their conference mark with 2 Horizon League games remaining. The Mastodons are at number 5. At number 4, Notre Dame. Had to put Notre Dame above the Mastodons. I debated it, but Notre Dame did beat the Mastodons in an exhibition game, and so that's kind of the tiebreaker. Notre Dame is 12-16 this year, 6-11 in the ACC, and it's a down year for the ACC. But Notre Dame has talent that's coming into South Bend. I think Micah Shrewsbury's going to have that program near the top of the ACC very soon. At number 3, the Butler Bulldogs. I think they're just getting chewed up a little bit in a really tough conference, but they battled St. John's to a close game, fell just short to St. John's, and you know how highly I think of St. John's. 13-15 on the season for the Butler Bulldogs, 6-11 in the league. We're going to give a drum roll for number 2.
They'll know who number 1 is.
So if I give number 2, we know number 1, so we'll do the drum roll on number 2.
Yep.
At number 2. Can't put them number 1. They've lost 4 in a row. The Purdue Boilermakers. They are 19-9, and they've got one of the best records, in fact, the best record in the state. 11-6 in the Big Ten, but they're sliding. Now, I will tell you this. Come Friday, they beat UCLA. I might bump them right back up to number 1. And it's really hard to put Purdue above IU when IU just beat Purdue and Purdue's lost 4 straight. So this snapshot gives me Purdue at number 2. And at number 1, you've got the Indiana Hoosiers right now. They seem to be hot, playing their best basketball. Is it number 1 in the state quality of basketball? Maybe not. But I have to put them number 1 just based on the results. So Indiana, 17-11 on the season. They've got the top spot for me in the Indiana College Basketball Power Rankings.
Let us know what you think of Brett's rankings on the text line 260-447-8500.
Or don't. Yeah.
Do it.
Don't need to open that can of worms because we've got a guest coming up next. On the other side of the break, we're going to talk to Kent Sterling. A lot to talk about with our favorite guest on this program, Kent Sterling, joining us next on the Sports Rush, 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Mastodons basketball against Northern Kentucky tonight at the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum. Tip is at 7. We'll have the pregame for you starting at 6:45. Now joining us on our guest line, our favorite guest out of Indianapolis. Of course, you can find him many different places, including YouTube. You can find him on X, formerly known as Twitter, and a number of other places, maybe just bouncing around town down in Indianapolis. It is Kent Sterling. And, Kent, it's kind of exciting down there in Indy right now. It's Combine Week, and how much do you take in the Combine?
I'd go down there, and I go to the podiums for some of the guys. The tight ends spoke this morning, so I wanted to hear from Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland and Harold Fannin because they might wind up being Colts. And then every once in a while, you kind of mill around and you hear somebody say some stuff. And you think, man, that guy's very interesting. And like Howard Cross from Notre Dame, he spoke yesterday, and I happened to hear his podium, and I was like, my God, that guy is going to make more money in media than he's going to make in football. He was just astoundingly entertaining and a good dude. So every once in a while you get surprised by that kind of stuff. And but today it was all about the tight ends, and Tyler Warren just sounds like a Colt to me, so I'd love to see them take him at 14.
What do you think is the priority for the Colts in this draft? I mean, is that the first and most important position they're going to be looking at in that first round?
I think it needs to be. If you're going to continue to, invest resources in Anthony Richardson and try to get him to the point where he's a high-quality quarterback in the NFL, you need a tight end. I don't know what Patrick Mahomes would be without Travis Kelce, but he wouldn't be the Patrick Mahomes that's won multiple Super Bowls, I don't think. I think that you've got to have a very versatile tight end who can do a lot of different things and who can be kind of a top 5 guy at that position. If you want to move the sticks, give a quarterback a security blanket, give him a really big target in the end zone that he can throw to on occasion. I think you've got to have that kind of guy, and Tyler Warren checks all the boxes. He blocks, he can receive, he can move to H-back, he can do a lot of stuff. I really like him. He sounds like a Colt. He sounds like he would fit in perfectly with the rest of the offensive line. Well, he's very economical with his words, just like Quentin Nelson is, just like Braden Smith is. I think he would be a terrific component, both from a kind of a receiver standpoint, but then again also as a really good blocker.
You bring up the offensive line, and I think that's kind of an interesting subject because I'm not sure who is going to ultimately be that offensive line. For how many years have we been sold the idea that the Colts had such a solid, strong offensive line? And I'm not sure there might be 2 or even 3 pieces from that offensive line that could not be Colts next year.
Yeah, we're going to find out. Chris Ballard the other day said that he and Ryan Kelly's agent are going to sit down next week and kind of talk about whether he can come back, will come back, what kind of a deal it'll take to bring him back. They do have Tanner Bortolini as a backup, and Bortolini, when Ryan Kelly was hurt last year, really did pretty good work. Then at right guard, Will Fries, with a kind of a catastrophic injury that he's working through still right now. He's going to be a free agent, or the Colts going to want to invest in bringing him back as kind of a wounded guy and somebody who may be able to play at the level he played at, but you really don't know. Are you going to want to invest big money in him? And then Braden Smith, the mysterious Braden Smith, who left the team in December and never came back, and it's never been explained exactly why. And they said, Ballard the other day said that he wants to play football, and they're going to try to make that happen, but he's a $20 million ticket right tackle. I would want to have assurances that if healthy, he's going to be able to play for 17 games.
What's crazy?
And not have to go through what he's gone through, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And we don't know what it is, and they won't tell us what it is. And good for them for not doing it. They say it's a personal thing, so good. Things don't leak out of that organization. You know, they may give away the football, but they do not give away secrets.
And we don't know if, we didn't know if it was something personal or something family related, but it did sound like what Chris Ballard said is he's doing better and wants to return. So it does sound now like it's a personal matter with Braden Smith.
Yeah, and so your imagination kind of runs wild a little bit. It wasn't an injury situation. It was something he had to get through. And that leaves a few boxes unchecked. And so you're not exactly sure what it is, but, he needed some help in some regard and seems to have gotten that help. And now he wants to play football again, and we'll see where that lands him.
Ken Sterling joining us here on the Sports Rush. Something else that Chris Ballard brought up, and I guess it leads to a question I've got for you, is that there's going to be a quarterback competition. So we know one of those 2 guys, but if it's a competition, there's got to be more than one. Who's the other guy going to be that's going to compete against Anthony Richardson, and are you buying that there's a competition?
Yeah, I think I'm not buying it because I don't think that any quality GM, and whatever you think of Chris Ballard, I think he's a quality GM. You know, he's somewhere in the middle tier of NFL GMs, and so you've got to give him some credit. What they need to focus on is high-quality quarterback play that's going to lead to winning seasons, not some, contest during training camp and see who comes out the better quarterback. I want to get the best possible quarterback that can be gotten, bring that guy into camp, have he and Anthony Richardson go through camp, and at the end of it, who gives us the better chance to win? Now, if you want to call that a competition, you can call it a competition. What I call it is quality management and roster construction. You got to get a quarterback in that building who can play winning football, and if it's not Anthony Richardson, it better damn well be somebody else, because you can't win without a winning quarterback. Whether that's Sam Darnold, that seems like an awfully pricey ticket, or Jameis Winston, which would not be altogether that pricey, or Justin Fields. I have no idea who it's going to be, but I don't think it's going to come via the draft. I don't think that all of a sudden they're going to take dart and say that somehow that's going to be a quality quarterback competition during camp. I don't think you want to restart the clock on another guy you're not sure about whether he can play. I don't think that makes any sense at all. So I think over the next, once free agency gets started, on like March 9th or March 11th, whatever it is, I think that they're going to move quickly and they're going to bring a guy in. It's not going to be via trade because unless it's a guy for a guy, he is not going to give up more draft equity to go get a flawed kind of quarterback, and that's what you're going to wind up having access to. You know, he's not going to give up 2 1s or a 1 and a 3 to go get Matthew Stafford at the age of 37. That's not Chris Ballard at all. So that's not the thing that's going to happen. They're going to sign a free agent. We'll see who it is. I hope it's Justin Fields, because that's the one that makes the most sense.
Is this Chris Ballard talking to the agents in a public forum where he's telling the quarterbacks that might be considering where they're going to sign that you come here and you're going to have a chance to compete?
One of the things that Chris Ballard is a very honest guy. So I don't believe he's using subterfuge and the media to communicate with anybody. I think he is what he is. And that is a guy who's going to stand behind a podium, answer questions, and give as much honesty as he feels is appropriate. I don't think that he's playing games. He's not a game player. He doesn't, like with Adam Schefter. Schefter's a guy, he deals in information. There are teams that'll give him information, and Schefter will give information to those teams. I've talked to guys who run franchises who do this with Adam Schefter. Chris Ballard doesn't play that game. I think Chris Ballard keeps it really simple and doesn't try to outfox anybody. He just does what he does as well as he can and is as good, as honest about it and decent about it as he can be.
Let's talk about the Indiana Hoosiers. Last night, the win over Penn State, and something that I think has evolved with this program is I think finally Mike Woodson's starting to figure this team out. He kept saying in post-game comments that he had to figure it out. I think the answer is Galloway, Leal, and Goody, because all of a sudden he's found a core that he can kind of work with and trust, and this team's been much better over the last few games.
Yeah, that it took him 25 games to figure this out is kind of embarrassing. I don't think he deserves any kind of pats on the back for suddenly deciding that they can only go with one big and for kind of a four-guard perimeter. It's made sense from the beginning. He's refused to do it, wanted to play Ballo and Renew and Mbako at the same time, and it never worked. It was never productive. And so all of a sudden, because, he kind of had to, you wind up with sort of that four-guard offense and defense, guys who work together well and collaborate well. And then you got a big down low, whether that's Ballo or Renew, and it works. They were down 5 with 8:50 left. Those 5 guys are then in the game, and they outscored Penn State by 10 points that last 8:50. You don't need analytics to show you exactly what the right route is. All you got to do is have a pair of eyes and watch that group play. They're kind of harmonious. They play defense well enough that it leads to good, productive offense, and it's winning basketball. You saw it against Purdue, and now you've seen it against Penn State. And he kind of sat up there at the microphone and acted like, it's Einstein and E equals MC squared. He's discovered the theory of relativity. No, we did that months ago. We know this, and he didn't. But now he's saying that he invented it. It's like copyright theft. I don't understand what the man's doing, but thank God he landed on it before all was lost. Because now Indiana's kind of in the game. They're in a spot where maybe they get an NCAA bid.
Well, and I wanted to ask you about how close you think they are. I see a split out west, a win over Ohio State, and one Big Ten tournament win. That gets them to 20. I think that puts them in the field.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think if you wind up 500 in the Big Ten and then 500 extending into the Big Ten tournament, I think you wind up in the field. They don't have a bad loss. They're undefeated against quad 2, 3, and 4 teams. I think they're 13-0 right now against those teams. And they've got 4 wins against quad 1 opponents. And I think that distances them. If you want to talk about NET, it distances them from like North Carolina, who's got 1 quad 1 win, SMU. You've got other teams that are vying for those last bids, the play-in games in Dayton. I think that they're a real good candidate as long as what you said happens. and that's that they only lose down the stretch to Oregon, and then they come into Indianapolis, they win game 1, and then what happens in game 2 or 3? I don't think that would only improve their seed, I think.
Kent, who's going to be the next coach? Do you have an idea? Are you zeroed in on anyone?
You know what? The more I talk to people, there's different names are floated out there at different times. And the name that's being floated out there again and again and again now and more loudly by people who kind of know who they should take, who they should go get, is T.J. Otzelberger. He's from Iowa State. That's a guy who really turned that thing around. Steve Prohm had, kind of a rough go at the end, had a 2-22 season, replaced by Otzelberger, and they go to the big dance the next year, and they've never not gone, and they're in line to be a 2 seed this year. The buyout, I think, is $4 million, so that's doable. This is a guy who looks like somebody who can coach basketball and get guys to play a little bit of defense, which would be nice, without taking 25 games to figure out a rotation to do it. And so that's the name I keep hearing. But, if we were talking about Chris Ballard keeping secrets, Scott Dolson, Chris Ballard's got nothing on Scott Dolson. Scott Dolson's pretty good at keeping it quiet.
T.J. Otzelberger was the coach of South Dakota State when the Mastodons were in the Summit League, and South Dakota State was kind of one of the rivals because the Mastodons had a really good team, and South Dakota State under T.J. Otzelberger had a really good team.
What do you think of him?
He seemed solid. Didn't see him more than a couple of years, and he was off to, where was it, Utah State? Was
UNLV.
Or UNLV was his next stop. Yeah, so he disappeared quickly, but they were a good basketball team for the couple of years he was there. So it's kind of interesting to see a guy that you kind of go back and think we were there in the beginning, and now you see where he's at with a chance perhaps to become the next Indiana coach. Kent, always enjoy it. It's always a great time talking to you. Best of luck with the rest of the combine. How many years is that thing going to stay in Indy? Are they going to get an extension done while they're there this week?
I sure hope so, because there's no place better at doing it.
I mean, they show out every time they put this on. I mean, great place to host these types of events. Kent, thanks so much, man. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it.
That is Kent Sterling joining us here on the Sports Rush. Of course, you can always catch up with Kent. Best place to do it's on his YouTube channel, where he's constantly got videos coming out. The mornings, the night, instant reactions after IU games. Kent Sterling, KentSterling.com. We'll take a break. We've got another hour on the other side. Plenty of things to talk about, including Eric Dudukevich, who will join us to talk some high school basketball. That's all coming up on the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM.